Well, what do you think it is that we do here, Bridget? Obviously, we're very sophisticated.
I am nothing if not sophisticated. In fact, I might just be nothing.
Welcome to Lights, Camera, Remake. I'm Erica Strout.
I'm Bridget LaMonica.
Join us as we go in search of the best and worst sequels and remakes in cinema around the world.
People are always wondering, has Hollywood run out of ideas?
People are always wondering that.
Has this ever happened to you? Have you been in a black and white infomercial furiously scrubbing the counters wondering, when will this get better? Introducing the 7th intro for the podcast.
This is the podcast all the doctors don't want you to know about.
Has Hollywood run out of ideas?
Has Hollywood turned into a big stiff?
Is creativity in Hollywood dead in the water?
Could it be water skiing while dead in the water? Oh. Now I have to help my dog figure out how to get into a blanket.
My dog...
She's basically a weasel.
My dog's given up and she's spread-eagled on her bed now. I love that we have puppy play dates while we're doing this.
I know. It's so nice.
It's nice. I like
good
it.
That we can have them all together.
Yeah.
So this week, I got to pick the movie, and I picked Weekend at Bernie's.
Okay. I remember saying, I'm pretty sure I saw Weekend at Bernie's. It's really one of those, like, cultural touchstones. Like, everyone makes a Weekend at Bernie's joke. But why did you pick Weekend at Bernie's?
Funny you should ask. The reason I picked Weekend at Bernie's for this episode is because there's no sequel to Captain Ron.
I was not. You hit me upside the head with that. That's not what I was expecting. Captain Ron? God damn.
Which is, I watched that around the same time I watched a revisited Weekend at Bernie's for this episode, and it's... it has a lot of actors that I like in it. Kurt Russell is Captain Ron.
Oh. Kurt Russell, yes. Okay,
the lady who plays
didn't realize.
Martin Short's wife, I recognize her, but I can't remember her name. Mary Kay Place just came to my brain. I think that's her.
Oh, look at this. Oh, yes, I've heard of this movie. I've heard of this. I'm thinking of a different movie.
Oh.
But you were like, I want a sequel to Captain Ron to talk about, but it doesn't exist. So Weekend at Bernie's. I actually thought you picked it because you were telling me you didn't like the sequel.
For Weekend at Bernie's?
Yeah.
Oh. You know what? It's funny. I think I was expecting it to be like total weak sauce. And I didn't hate it. I mean, not that the original sets the highest bar, but like, okay.
It's sequelitis.
Here's my struggle with sequels oftentimes is when it's basically what I call a victory lap.
Yeah, that's definitely a common phrase for these.
Yes, and as much as I don't want to speak ill of Nia Vardalos, but My Big Fat Greek Wedding, the original one, I thought was very funny. Mm-hmm. The second one was the same exact movie.
Oh.
It was just her with... She's already married and she has a kid now, and so the kid's kind of going through some stuff. Mm-hmm. But it's all the same jokes. It's like literally, it's the Windex joke. Mm-hmm. It's like... I'm trying to think of like what something her aunt says. It's like exactly the same from the first movie to the second movie. It's just like, why? Why did you bother?
Why did you do another one? Because you could, I guess.
Like, you're just still rehashing the same reason why you think Greek people are funny.
That actually reminds me of when we waited like 10 years for a sequel to The Incredibles, mm-hmm. and it came out, and it did well, but everyone said that was literally the same movie. It was the same type of villain, same type of twist, same type of whatever. It's just it focused more on the mom than the dad, but like it was literally the same movie.
Yeah.
Victory lap.
So that's my biggest, I think, gripe, at least at this point.
Okay.
I reserve the right to change my mind. But that's my biggest gripe with sequels at this point, is when it's basically the same thing done a second time. Why did you bother?
I think that's fair. But yeah, let's talk about the first Weekend at Bernie's. It came out in 1989, year of my birth.
You're dating yourself.
I know. I just saw it. I was like, oh, that's why I am the way I am. Look at the movies that came out that year. Right. Yeah, let's talk about the first movie. So the IMDb description is, 2 idiots try to pretend that their murdered employer is really alive, leading the hitman to attempt to track him down to finish him off.
They not only try, they 100% succeed somehow.
And I also added, this movie clearly wants us to suspend all disbelief and assume that everyone is an idiot who can't tell when they're interacting with a dead body.
Right. Or they're that... I got the feeling like everyone's just that drunk all the time.
Well, that's...
They're on the Hamptons.
Yeah,
right?
they set that up where it's
Hampton Island.
They're in the Hamptons, which I have never ever heard anyone else call it Hampton Island. So someone correct me if I'm wrong. I thought it was just the beach. But
I thought it was Montauk.
I thought it was Montauk. No, Montauk's where all the crazy lab experiments came from, and then we renamed it Stranger Things. Anyway, so yeah, they were probably all drunk, right? They established a party culture on this beachy wonderland in Long Island.
Summer beach time in New England is definitely a thing.
Right.
So this movie starts out, Larry and Richard, these two guys, two low-level employees at an insurance company in New York City. When they find that someone has been embezzling from the company, they feel like they're going to be rewarded. They bring this info to their boss. Bernie Lomax is the guy's name. What a name. That's such a good name.
What a name.
Bernie Lomax.
Sounds like it should be a brand name.
I feel like Lomax would be a great name for a band.
Ooh. Okay, file that one away for later.
Yes, copywritten. So don't steal it. And he actually rewards them with a trip to his house in the Hamptons. It's not a condo. I don't know. Was that what was in there?
I don't know. I wrote it.
Oh, okay.
I might have messed some things up. I wrote the synopsis, and that's why Erica's having trouble. She's like, I don't believe in you.
He invites them to his house in the Hamptons for the weekend. Unbeknownst to the two main characters, Richard and Larry, it was Bernie who is cooking the books, and he's going to have him killed through his mob connection.
Yeah, which I didn't realize at first was what they were. The mob. It wasn't obvious to me and when they first met, but it makes sense.
It's just sort of implied, you know?
It's implied, yeah. I had to read that online. I'm like, oh, it was the mob.
It's businessmen, you know, like...
They're good fellas, huh?
Yeah.
Have they made any terrible sequels to that yet? That's a really good movie. Anyway. I don't think they did.
Hated watching that film.
Really?
Well, I think, okay.
No, we can't get to this topic.
I think the reason that I don't think it was a badly made film, for, you know, to be clear, but I hated watching it because I just didn't feel like he was
sympathetic.
A sympathetic character.
No, he's a bad guy.
Yeah, and I think at that point in my life, I had a much harder time watching that kind of thing and like taking it in as it is. Yeah, you definitely have to separate yourself from the protagonist in that movie. Yeah. Because you end up not liking him at all. Right, yeah. So I think if I watched it now, I would have a different view on it probably, but... I feel like that about some movies. Yeah. The first time I watched Blazing Saddles, I was actively angry at it until I got that the jokes were part of it. Like, I was just like, this movie is terrible. It's racist. It's being so mean. And then I got to the end of the movie and I realized that Mel Brooks knew what he was doing. Turns out. An accomplished director knew what he was doing. It's not always the case. Okay. Not bad at his job. Yes. So we're on the second paragraph. Yeah. Bernie Lomax goes to dinner with this mob guy. Turns out Bernie is screwing this guy's girlfriend anyway. So when he's like, you gotta help me take care of these two guys, I'll have them out at the Hamptons this weekend. And the mob guy's like, I don't remember what his name is. Yeah. Doesn't matter. He's like, Paulie, yeah, okay, fine, we'll take care of it. And then Bernie's like, oh, thank goodness. And Bernie leaves. And then the girlfriend follows him out to go, like, kiss him blatantly in the street. It was pretty bold. Her boyfriend's, like, just inside the restaurant. Ma'am. One of the other guys that was at the dinner table was like, mob boss guy, blah, 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 what are we doing? And then the mob boss guy's like, don't worry about it, we're going to take care of Bernie instead. Yeah. Yeah, I'll let Bridget take it from here. Okay. Well, Larry and Richard, our main characters, are two idiots, as they're called, which I didn't feel like they were that dumb. They're just kind of opportunistic and young and impulsive, but fine, we'll call them idiots. Idiots is a harsh... It seems harsh, but whatevs. Anyway, Larry and Richard, they make it to the Hamptons. They're just like reveling in the whole beach atmosphere and all the rich people and the bodacious babes. Can I say that? Am I allowed to say that? Can I claim this word? Bodacious? Bodacious.
I feel like it was a 1980s movie, and it kind of felt like the right choice. And then I was like immediately questioning myself.
I'm just trying to remember if it has any connotation beyond just like a good connotation.
Okay, let's put it this way: they're ogling every woman they pass.
But yes.
They finally make it to Bernie's house. And surprise, surprise, he's dead. Turns out the mob wasn't happy with them. They had him killed instead of these boys. And they panic, right? They panic because they don't know what to do. I think they're about to call the police. I think they're about to do what they're supposed to do. Mm-hmm. But then, like, apparently a party was already planned at Bernie's house because he's just this mad party animal every weekend.
I think a hot woman comes in and asks where Bernie is.
Oh.
And Larry's like, wait a minute, dude.
She's like, I'm going to borrow the yacht or something.
Yeah. I'm going to borrow his boat. Just tell him I have his boat.
You just casually walk into someone's house and grab the keys to a boat. I don't understand this life. But yeah, I think that's basically what convinced them to be like, well, we're already here. Why don't we just party?
Yeah, like, what's a little longer? He's already dead.
Yeah. And so, in that evening, tons of people show up to Bernie's house for a party. And, this is when the classic Weekend at Bernie's hijinks begin. And they start propping him up around the house. He's on the couch. He's got sunglasses on to hide him. And I guess people just assume he's, like, really drunk. He's already really partied. He's just ignoring them. But, no, he did.
Yeah. And they keep his sunglasses on him. He has this, like doofy smirk on his face most of the film.
He does.
It's so good. Like, it was such a good choice. I don't know.
It was good.
I don't know if Terry Kiser took thought of that himself or if somebody gave him that direction, but his execution is brilliant on that because it's just like, well, here I am. Like,
spare a thought for Terry Kiser, who for 95% of the movie was just a corpse, being kicked and thrown around and dropped, and my goodness, the man's went through a lot.
Yes. So, through the making of Weekend at Bernie's, Terry Kiser suffered 3 broken ribs.
Oh my God.
And he jammed a vertebrae in his neck.
Ah.
And I can't believe he didn't have more injuries to report than that.
Yeah.
And maybe he did, but those were the only ones he listed in the interview I watched.
Some rough stuff that happened for sure. And I kept thinking, like, they have stunt doubles, right? They have, like, or even just, like, a dummy they could throw down the stairs every now and then.
Yeah, I think the dummy's more obvious in the second film for some reason.
That makes sense.
Yeah, they definitely had a dummy available and stunt doubles available. So anyway, through a series of slapstick hijinks, Bernie's corpse ends up snuggled beside beautiful women. Oh, yeah, okay, we'll talk about that. Lounging in a beach chair, washing up on shore, being buried in the sand by a child, and eventually flipping off a gurney to spook the main characters. He doesn't just flip off that gurney. He does, like, a gymnastics routine,
and he
down
like
to the
lands
beach where they're sitting,
weirdly propped up behind them, and it's just jaunty again with the little smile and the little frozen expression on his face. He's so good in this. I'm so impressed with this guy. Why didn't he have not that this wasn't a big movie, but like, it's because stunt people don't get Oscars. Fight them, people, fight them.
Terry Kiser wasn't a stunt double though.
I don't know. This just still counts as a stunt. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
All right. So, let's see. Okay. It's a series of hijinks that can only exist if nobody, and I mean nobody, can tell they're looking at a dead body.
Yeah, it's the only way the movie works, is that you have to suspend your disbelief that nobody figures out he's dead.
Yeah, because I can't remember what it's called, but there's that thing where when a body lies in a certain position after you die, like, there's, like, pooling of blood that happens. There's rigor mortis.
There's a lot of things that happen that just don't happen here in order for this to work.
Yeah.
He never, there's never rigor mortis. There's no, there's a term for it. Yeah, where
especially not
it
in
gets
the second
gross.
where he starts dancing.
Okay, we're not there yet. Hold back.
Okay.
Focus. But yes, I want to talk about that.
So, eventually, the hitman that killed Bernie is found out, and Larry and David are somehow not in trouble for puppeteering the corpse of their employer. Actually, it's only about 24 hours, I think.
Yeah, it's not a full weekend, which is kind of funny that the title was Weekend at Bernie's.
It's like Friday afternoon to Saturday.
Yeah, but that didn't make a catchy title, so... Friday to afternoon to Saturday at Bernie's. In the Hamptons. On Hampton Island. Not catchy.
Yeah. But they get the hitman because then because he thinks Bernie is still alive.
Oh, yeah, he's freaking out because he's like, I thought I killed this guy. And he keeps seeing this guy he's seeing him propped up. He's seeing him, like, in different positions where it appears like he's alive.
Yeah.
And he's freaking out, man.
Doesn't he shoot him too? And he tries to strangle him.
It's hilarious. It's macabre what happens to this body. But he gets shot. He does get shot. And at one point he's choking him. Yeah, I got him. And then he sees him like get propped up again against something. And he's like, oh, he's alive. Like, wow.
You think this guy's gonna have to check himself into a clinic for a little while after this?
I think he does. The type of comedy that was being made around this time, it was just like, what if 2 dudes, a dead body, I don't know, hijinks, profit.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it worked. I mean, we still talk about Weekend at Bernie's. It's 2024, and it's still a phrase that's used as a pop culture joke.
Yes.
Like, oh yeah, that guy. It's like Weekend at Bernie's. It's like, what are you saying? Like, what? Why is this still a phrase? The movie was in 1989, and it's a silly movie, and we're still talking about it.
We're gonna Weekend at Bernie's this guy.
Yeah, and it's funny.
Well, I think it is interesting that the director of this film also directed First Blood. Just as one point about him. The other point about him is that he cameos as Richard's father.
Oh, okay.
So Richard lives with his parents.
He's the father. Oh, I remember the scene now.
And when Richard brings a date back to his parents' place, he's trying to pass it off like it's his own place.
Yeah, he lives alone. No, he has a roommate. No, and then his father walks in.
His father walks through the living room in his underwear, like dads in the 80s did. So he kind of like stumbles through the living room toward the refrigerator, grabs a drinks some milk out of the carton. And when he comes back through,
doesn't he say it's his butler or something stupid like that?
He claims to the woman that his dad is actually his butler. He's like, oh, you can set out my whatever suit for tomorrow. And the dad's like, what if I lay you out? Or something like that. I can't remember the exact wording.
Quintessential dad.
It's so good.
I can't believe that. I remember you telling me this. It's still
called out.
Still hard to believe that was the director. That's so funny.
Yeah.
I like that cameo.
Yeah, I think that was a good choice for a cameo.
We were talking about the dubbing throughout the movie, right? Like, we were watching this together. I kept thinking about it. I'm like, no, I'm just being picky. And then I kept hearing it. I'm like, Erica, does it sound like they did, like, really bad ADR on this movie?
And I said, uh-huh.
And we were both on the same page. Like, a lot of times when the characters are talking, sometimes when they're talking away from the camera, or just when they're, like, sometimes when we're over the shoulder of someone they're talking, I'm like, this is really badly dubbed in. Like, you could tell it was recorded in a different environment. They replaced something they were saying. But yeah, I was noticing that the ADR, or, basically, if anyone is curious, ADR is something you do after the fact, after you've filmed, and let's say the sound was bad on the location. A actor will go into usually a studio environment and re-record over the video. They'll watch the video, they'll try to time it exactly how they said it. Or sometimes they do ADR because they need to replace a line. They need to replace a name that's not accurate anymore. They need to, this line didn't test well. We can't film it again. Let's just dub it over. Sometimes that's why they'll do ADR. But if it's not done in a similar environment, or they don't put the right, like, background noise to it, it'll sound incorrect, and your ear will catch on that, especially if you know what to listen for.
Also, if the actor isn't able to match the words with the lips on screen.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure is a tricky thing to do.
That, and the tone. Are you in the same emotional state? Because that changes how you say something.
That's true.
I've definitely seen that on TV shows where they did a rush dub on a line. I'm like, they didn't say that. Not then, anyway.
Yeah. I do not remember what ADR stands for.
I think it's automated dialogue replacement. I could be wrong, but I have the internet at my disposal. Automated dialogue replacement.
It is automated. Okay.
Yep, it refers to the process of re-recording audio in a more controlled and quieter setting.
There it is. Okay.
Thank you, Backstage.com.
We got to learn something today.
But yeah, we did notice that the ADR was bad, and it did take us out of it a little bit. But I have a feeling, wasn't it usually when they were on the beach?
I felt like it was mostly the first section of the film.
Like in The Office.
Yeah, well, when they were on the roof, I'm trying to remember. I can't remember the exact moments now.
See, if it was on the beach, beaches are often windy. The sound could have been bad. If it was on a roof, it could have been windy. The sound could have been bad. Or God forbid, on the day your XLR cable stopped working and nobody noticed, or something like that. You felt really called out for a moment there, didn't you? I didn't mean that.
Don't jinx me.
I'm so sorry. Her eyes went so wide. I feel terrible. But yeah, so any number of reasons can happen where they have to redo the dialogue. So yeah, that's a little lesson on ADR. I am a camera person. That's as much as I understand about it.
I think that's pretty good.
Thank you.
Pretty good intro to that. These are things that you don't necessarily learn about if you're not working in it.
Yeah,
or studying it actively. So this film had a $15 million budget.
Dear Lord.
And it grossed $32 million at the box office.
Oh, so easy win there. Yeah,
they definitely made their money back. I do have some information on the casting of this film as well.
Okay.
I need to stop leaning backward, probably. So Andrew McCarthy was originally cast in this film, but he was originally cast in the role of Richard, who
the opposite character.
He's kind of the straight man, if you will. Like, Richard is the one who's, like, genuinely trying and, like, wants to succeed, and Larry is more of the carefree, I kind of just want to party and make out with girls and get drunk and not work. And John Cryer from Pretty in Pink was originally cast in the Larry role. I think he had to back out for some reason, and then Andrew McCarthy, once he read the script fully, he decided he wanted to be in the role of Larry.
Okay. Would have been interesting to see John Cryer and as a baby in that role. That would have been kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he would have done a great job. I think they also considered the Coreys.
The Coreys, yeah. Was it Corey Feldman and Corey the other one? Haim? I would say Haynes. I don't know his name. Haim. There was a couple of Coreys in the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were in consideration.
But I think they were too young to be, like, believable.
Oh, that's right. We were looking at the time frame.
Company employees.
Yeah, it didn't look believable. So the leads they did cast, Andrew McCarthy and Jonathan Silverman. I gotta feel they were really believable in their roles. Like, I could see them as being, like, kind of like starting insurance agent kind of guys that, you know, they want to succeed a little better, but they haven't quite gotten there yet, and they're a little too ambitious for their own good, and
like they've graduated college, but they're just at the bottom rung at their first jobs, you know. Like,
yeah,
they have a long way to go.
I thought they were personable, and I followed them. I mean, like, the one character, which one? I get the two names mixed up. Which one is like the real wild card, not the straight one?
Larry.
So Larry, I felt like he was a little skeezy in some ways, but I'm again looking at that from a very modern sensibility. I'd be like, I wouldn't talk to this guy, please. Yeah. But in this movie, like, I find him funny. I find him a good counterpoint to the very straight-laced friend of his.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I keep getting their names mixed up. I kept seeing Larry and Richard, and I kept forgetting who was who.
Yeah, well, and I think without them coming from the two corners that they're coming from, you don't quite get the argument. You know, like, you kind of need them to reason, reckon with the reasoning of, like, you should just call the cops because this guy's dead.
Yeah, we need that give and take.
But then there's one who's like, but... You know, but what if we
you kind of need him to be the crap stirrer who's just like, but what if we did this and then we're gonna do that, and his friend just has to go along with it. He pushes. They do have a back and forth where they push against, like, no, we don't need that, no, we shouldn't do that, yeah, we should go back to the police. Like, they have to have that back and forth because there's not a third person in the room to do that for them.
And Larry is manipulating Richard at times
absolutely
to not call the cops because he's dangling
he's so manipulative
a woman that he's into.
He's like, don't you like this pretty lady? And he's like, well, sure, but, you know, puppeteering our dead boss's corpse. I mean, he didn't say it that way, but you know, kind of said it.
I did write down in my notes, this movie is full on rape culture.
I mean, I kind of wrote something similar at one point. Yeah.
Yeah, which is, I mean, yeah, I believe that is true, but it's
a product of its time, shall we say.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to give too much of a pass for these kinds of things. It's not like Revenge of the Nerds where there's some like actual rape that's happening.
That's a movie I changed my opinion on very deeply. I used to
treated like it's just fine.
Yeah, I used to love that movie. As a kid, I watched like movies like Revenge of the Nerds, and I thought it was so funny. It was so great. It was so this. I didn't realize the implications of the end of that movie.
Yeah.
And now I'm very like distasteful of that ending of that movie for that reason. Yeah. So I wish they didn't do that.
Yeah, this movie's not like that, fortunately. But it definitely is still a product of that culture.
Yeah, I mean, this movie could be considered icky because of the treatment of a dead body, but it's done in such a cartoonish way that I feel like it's palatable.
Yeah.
Because for one thing, if they followed any sort of science at all with this dead body, it would have gotten super gross real fast. And I'm glad they didn't do that. I don't need that. I don't even know what else. Oh gosh, wasn't his wife? No, his girlfriend came in. Bernie's girlfriend came in and they're like, oh, she's gonna find out he's dead. And she goes upstairs and then comes back down like so satisfied smoking a cigarette. And I'm like, oh my God. What? Did you forget that scene happened? Because
No.
just came back to me.
I definitely did not forget that it happened. I'm still reckoning with my feelings about it.
It was really, it was a lot. It was probably a funny joke at the time, but it was still creepy AF.
It's kind of far to go.
It's far. It's far.
Has, according to everything that we're being told, she has had sex with a corpse.
And somehow didn't realize it. That's the other thing. And there was plenty of jokes made at that point. It was like, oh, that was the best ever, or something like that. I'm like, oh, you guys are reaching now. This is a little much.
Doesn't Richard or Larry, don't they say something like, I get in trouble if I just lie there?
Yeah. Okay, that was...
Isn't there a joke made like that?
That was kind of a funny joke, though.
Maybe it's not...
Because it was at least at his own expense.
Yeah, I mean, that joke is... Yeah.
Maybe it was the
hitman that said it.
Well,
okay.
should we move on to the sequel?
Now that we've properly scolded everyone listening.
We've scolded some people, but you know what? We're still having a good time, and I hope you are too.
I sure am, Bridget. Thanks for asking.
Good. So in 1993, what happened?
Well, Bernie's back, and he's still dead. What happened.
Weekend at Bernie's 2 in 1993. Somehow we made a second movie about the same dead body, but with a twist.
So I think this is still a very abbreviated timeline. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's quite as abbreviated as the first one, but this film seems to start basically right after the last one ended, because the two characters, Larry and Richard, are called... I'm not sure why they're the ones who are called to go identify his body.
It doesn't make sense except the fact that we need them there.
I don't know why the body needs to be identified.
Okay, I wrote that in my notes.
What?
I wrote that in my notes, literally, like, why... Okay, well, hold on, I can find it here, hold on.
She's not going to let this go.
No, the sequel kicks off with Larry and Richard identifying the body of Bernie Lomax at the morgue for some reason, even though they were there when the body was taken away.
I said, how likely is it that these two lowly employees are the ones identifying the body and taking his personal effects home?
So, like, immediately, right off the bat, first 2 minutes of the movie, throw every piece of logic out the window. Yeah. Because not only do we have to set up that they're in the same room with the body, they're also getting his personal effects. They're getting enough information that they can find out he has a safe deposit box. And they can hatch a plan to go get the safe deposit box after they steal his body. Because they need his body there. I guess the bank will never be informed that he deceased. Ooh.
The employee at the bank who let them into the safe deposit box.
Shame on you.
That man, there's no way he was drunk.
Right. We no longer have the excuse that everyone is drunk around him. So the sequel asks you to just throw a lot of logic out the window.
Right. So yeah, that's why they have to stuff him. They fold him into a suitcase.
They fold him into a suitcase, which was already a kind of gag reflex inducing because I'm like, no way. Do they have to? Ew, no. I just imagining it messed me up. Then they put them in a mini fridge.
We are skipping something here, though.
Oh, yeah.
Which is before they get to the morgue to identify the body, the body is taken by two men who were sent to New York to get his body.
Specifically his body
to enchant it with a voodoo...
A voodoo curse or something? Or
spell?
Spell, yeah, like a voodoo spell. So, like, yeah, we've already jumped the shark, people. We've introduced voodoo into the world of Weekend at Bernie's.
Yes.
Yeah, so
works.
these
voodoo spell works.
These guys, they reminded me of a lot of Larry and Richard. They're very similar, honestly. It's Henry and Charles, which, again, very simple names, so I immediately forgot who was who. You got to give me better names, people. Something unusual. But Henry and Charles, they're charged by this voodoo queen, which is a thing, apparently. I don't know anything about that culture. To go get Bernie's body and chant it so that the body can find where the treasure is.
So, and these people come from St. Thomas.
So they're coming from the islands. They go to New York to get him.
But they are such New York dudes.
They're so New York. That's what I didn't understand. Did they come from New York, go to the islands? I don't know how they...
talking about going home?
I definitely spaced out in the first few minutes of the movie because I don't remember why they were there. They were like, oh, we're having a party. And it's like obviously not a party. It's definitely a voodoo like situation. I don't know what the words are. I'm like, have you not seen any movie at all? Okay. But yeah, they do. Okay, I gotta talk about the spell they cast though. Do you remember how they did it? Do you remember that they were supposed to use a live chicken? A live chicken, and they lost it?
Yeah.
Do you remember what they replaced it with?
Was it a pigeon?
It was a pigeon. How New York can we get? They lost the chicken. They're like, we need another chicken. They looked at a cooked chicken. He's like, it's got to be a live one. And then they see a pigeon, and they're like, close enough. So naturally, the spell goes awry.
What the spell does is that when music is playing, Bernie's body dances and walks. It kind of walks in a dancey kind of way.
Yeah, it's...
And in a kind of a droopy way.
So unusual. And, like, it's weird because, like, the lower body moves first, so the hips kind of go up and brings the rest of the body up into the air. And the first time he animated in this movie, I snort laughed so hard I hurt myself.
It's like, oh my god, because he's face down on the floor.
Yeah, just...
And then all of a sudden his body just starts like...
It has to be seen to believe. Wow.
It's so good.
So when Erica told me she wanted to watch Weekend at Bernie's, I'm like, oh, that's the one with the dancing body, right? And she's like, wait, that's Weekend at Bernie's too. And I'm like, oh, I think I've only seen the second one. This is the one I remembered from my childhood. Seeing it randomly on TV, probably split up by 100 commercial breaks.
Yeah.
This is the one I saw. And I remembered him as a dancing body.
Yeah.
Funny.
You know, I picked this one because I was like, oh, this will be fun. I can, like...
Really, like, tear into it.
I can, like, tear it to shreds, right? Like, I was expecting it to just really not hold up and just be, like, objectively bad. And I feel like, even with this sequel, I felt like it wasn't as bad as I expected it to be, and, like, it still had enough entertainment that I was, like, engaged.
Yeah, it was still funny. Like, there was parts, especially with his dancing stuff and his hijinks were still funny. A lot of it felt like it was rehashed a little bit, but now they had the body animating on its own instead of just being puppeted around.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a good way to kind of make more story out of it, but some of it was just preposterous.
You're taking it up a notch.
You met a random girl. She just happens to be an expert in all things voodoo, and she's like, "Oh yeah, that's dark magic. That's this. That's that." Like, how? She works at a hotel. How would you just assume she knew this stuff? Like, there was a lot of suspension of disbelief beyond the dancing dead body that I was like, okay, but that's a little much.
It's like that thing in Wayne's World when isn't it convenient that security guard had all that information? It seemed extraneous at the time. I think that's Wayne's World.
That might be Wayne's World. But that sounds like a joke they'd make. Like, wasn't it interesting how all these things just lined up? I like it
just totally
when the characters break the fourth wall.
Yep.
I find that very amusing.
That has to be Wayne's World because I don't think they break the fourth wall at all in Tommy Boy.
I don't think so either.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that. We're just like, how convenient these things are happening on all lining up so you can learn about voodoo from this random woman that you have started being involved with.
Again, I was reminded of certain cultural touch points of the early 90s. For instance, joining a conga line's a big deal for some reason. But I feel like there was a lot of conga line dance scenes in movies around that time.
Yeah.
Feels like a thing. Also, they had to get creative, right? Because our boys eventually figure out...
Do you smell a conspiracy?
Yes! And so my Congo line movie count will commence. Anyway, our boys eventually realized that Bernie dances when music is played. I guess they overheard the other guys at one point.
It takes them like half the film.
It takes a while.
But he dances his way out of the mini fridge.
He does, and joins the Congo line and ends up on the beach with a lady who is in love. And she's like, he's such a great listener. And I'm like, wow, we found another idiot on a beach to cradle dead Bernie.
She was trying to make her boyfriend jealous.
She was, and she succeeded.
And she snuggled Bernie's dead corpse on the beach all night.
Which, okay.
Because Larry and Richard find them on the beach in the morning.
They do. And this is after, keep in mind, I know we're jumping around, but like in the room when they opened the suitcase, one of them was like, I think it was Larry. He opened the suitcase and he's like, "Whoo, God, Bernie, you reek." He's like really stinking at this point, which probably, I don't know, whatever. They sprays him with the 1993 version of Febreze. I think it's just called toxic chemicals that smell like flowers.
It's called Lysol.
They probably sprayed him with Lysol. And then they shoved him in the fridge to, like, keep him on ice so, he doesn't decompose. Yeah, it's getting real dark real fast. But, like, later this woman is all up in Bernie's business and doesn't smell a thing. So I'm like, okay, we just forgot. We forgot that he was stinky. Which is probably good, because I don't think I could stomach the rest of the movie if everyone's like, oh, it smells like there's a corpse in here. I'm like, don't remind me. But yeah, I really wanted to point that out, because that was something I just got stuck on around that time. I'm like, doesn't he stink? Didn't you guys establish this? That's awful. How did no one notice? Anyway, okay.
That Lysol, powerful stuff.
Strong stuff. It ate a hole in the ozone layer, but by God, it kept Bernie rosy and fresh.
Should we do the synopsis for this one? Or
we kind of talk through it. So we basically, they eventually use Bernie to get to the treasure under the ocean. But here's the hitch: once he doesn't hear the music anymore, like when he goes underwater, he's dead again. He doesn't move. So they had to tape and like waterproof some headphones and stick it on him, which was freaking hilarious. I thought the little setups they had to do to get around Bernie needing to hear the music in order to move was funny. And stringing him up like a horse on a carriage. Oh my God. And he's just running along. It's so slapstick. It's so Three Stooges. It's ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, like, should we just wrap up? I mean, obviously we get to the ending and our boys, they bring the treasure to the Voodoo Queen. Voodoo Queen accidentally gets run over. The other two guys are somehow turned into goats. And Larry and Richard somehow still end up with money at the end, because I guess there was more money than there should have been in the case, which I'm like, that was rather convenient, but okay. They're like, Bernie stole $2 million. Actually, it's 3. We're keeping the other one. It's like, cool, you got away with a crime again. I'm trying not to look too deep into it, but damn. and at the end of the movie, I think it's important to note, Bernie is still dead.
Yes. Remains... Oh, in 2016, a third film was announced. Weekend at Bernie's 3, The Corpse Awakens. I haven't read that script, but apparently it is available online.
I might have to read it.
They didn't get past development with the production.
So it was stuck in what we call development hell, which is where, they try to get a movie started, and at some point it just falls apart. They either didn't get funding, or maybe it was terrible. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe the actors weren't on board. But it sounds like they tried, and it didn't stick. I want to see if that script is available.
In my defense, I did get up at 5 this morning.
Jeez, and you're still up with me? Damn. Oh yeah, it's on stage 32.
Stage 32.
103 pages.
103 pages.
Wait, let's see. Oh, wow, it just goes right to the script. Damn. Oh no, it opens on Grauman's Chinese Theater. Oh, Andrew McCarthy and Jonathan Silverman are in their absolute prime. Two young, handsome heartthrobs. Oh my god. Their eyes twinkle with the innocence and excitement of newly minted Hollywood stars. This week in Hollywood, the star-studded premiere of the new comedy Weekend at Bernie's.
I feel like all of these films really underline how great everybody thinks capitalism is.
Well, it's about greed, isn't it? It's just straight up about greed. Especially the second one, where Larry and Richard are trying to get to a safe deposit box. They're pretty sure that there's money or something in there. It eventually leads them to treasure, which they also want. And the voodoo subplot is also trying to get treasure. It's all about money. It's all about wealth. And a lot about disrespect and corpses.
I think it's a lot of the ends justify the means.
Ooh, yeah.
You wanted to talk about the music in this film.
I
and the
did.
second one specifically.
I'm sure you noticed it. So something I noted while I was watching Weekend at Bernie's 2 is that they apparently didn't have a music budget because they kept playing the same tune, same track, over and over and over. It was just like generic island music that had the same beat to it, the same melody, and it would play on the radio, and it would play through like the kettle drums or whatever. It would play everywhere. It was everywhere. I don't think there was any other like licensed music. I don't think they had the budget for it.
Yeah.
And it was
they used it diegetically and non-diegetically.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, I know I have to explain this. I took a movie soundtrack class in undergrad, and I'm happy to use that information now. So
thank God.
Thank you. No, thank diegetic music.
Oh, okay.
God damn, I'm not that full of myself. So diegetic music is music that exists in a scene. So it's like playing from a boombox. It's a band playing it, and the characters know that it's playing. Non-diegetic music is basically soundtrack music. It's John Williams, Hans Zimmer, playing beautiful orchestral suites. The Planet of the Apes aren't hearing this beautiful orchestra behind them.
Yeah, it's everybody flying in that helicopter to the island on in Jurassic Park.
Yeah, they're not hearing that, but we are as the audience. So that's non-diegetic music. Diegetic, it exists in the scene. Non-diegetic, it only exists for the audience. But my note was the music, the same island tune, switches back and forth between these two sides of it. And at one point, it's repeated too much. It's in the boombox. Now it's just for us. Now it's over here. Now it's just for us. And I'm like, oh gosh, please play a different track, people. It's got to be something. Hire a musician to come up with something random for you.
Yeah.
Something more than one melody.
This movie had a smaller budget than the first, is that right?
It had a $7 million budget, which is not
smaller.
It's not a ton. Considering they were filming in tropical locales and stuff.
Yeah.
The budget was $7 million. It did eventually make $12 million domestically. But I don't think I got a number for internationally. I feel like maybe this movie wasn't released internationally or something. Someone could correct me on that.
Maybe. It does have a different director than the first.
Mm-hmm.
Robert Klane, with a K. Robert Klane. Robert Klane directed this one.
I wonder why the original director didn't come back. Maybe he didn't like it.
What? It says 1 win and 1 nomination on awards?
What? Oh, it did. It won. It won all right. 1993 winner for worst sequel.
Wow.
That's
the nominee
fantastic.
That they didn't win was the sequel nobody was clamoring for. Ooh, that's hot. Ooh.
That's incredible. Wait, 1993.
The Fugitive?
Sister Act 2. So it beat out Sister Act 2, Back in the Habit. Oh, yeah, our dogs are asleep. Erica's falling asleep. She's been up since the crack of dawn. I'm just holding her up.
I watched the sunrise this morning.
Oh, my God.
Well, let's just answer the question, should they have bothered?
Should they have bothered? Okay, so I went back and forth on this since I rewatched this movie. And it's hard for me to decide because I remember the dancing corpse when I was a kid and I saw this on TV and thought it was hilarious. Now watching it as an adult, I see it's kind of like a whatever. It's just whatever. It's a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Was the question, did they need to make it? they didn't need to make it. I don't know, I still found it fun.
Yeah.
I mean, not all of it. It's not a great movie, but there's certain parts that are still funny. Especially, just honestly, all the body language that Terry Kiser did, just with the dancing and the grooving he does. I don't know how they moved him like that. I feel like they probably propped him up on wires sometimes, but
Yeah.
that was funny. That was worth the price of admission, which in my case was $4.67.
I feel like we didn't talk about Terry Kiser nearly as much as I would have liked to. Like,
talk about him.
oh yeah, let's talk about
Give him his day.
Because I was watching these moments where he was creating for the camera, and his physical comedy skills are seriously top notch. Like, and he was not a young man. I think he was in his 40s when they were filming this. So like, it's not like he's, you know, a 22-year-old and he can like, I mean, I'm sure he's like stretching and, you know.
But still, like, if I did half of this and I'm 35, like, I'd be very sore. I'd be messed up.
Yeah, I'd be worried about hurting myself.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, some of the things he does, and clearly he did hurt himself.
Yeah, on the first movie, which
Yeah.
makes me wonder, why did you do another movie where you're only a dead body
Yeah.
that sometimes gets up and dances?
Yeah. I mean, in a certain sense, it took me out of the story a little bit.
Yeah, in some ways, because I kept worrying about him. Terry, I hope you're doing good out there, bud.
Well, I think Terry's doing pretty good. I mean, from what I have read about him, he now lives in Colorado, and he owns an acting school.
Oh, good for him.
The school is in Austin, Texas, and now he works as the creative director of that school.
Okay.
So he
Still
founded
busy.
it. Yeah, he founded it, and now he is the creative director. He's still, yeah. I don't know how super active he is with like acting. Like his
He might not
Weekend at
anymore.
Bernie's are the only films that I've seen him in.
Right.
But my understanding is that he was a regular on some soaps
Okay.
back in the day, and he's done some work on the stage. But oddly enough, he does have an industrial engineering degree.
Wow. Sorry, I had to stop my dog from making noise.
Clearly he's a smart dude, but
Yeah, wow.
but yeah, I think he's doing well. It's just I'm still a little miffed that he didn't get more big movie roles.
Yeah, I mean,
he has.
who knows? Maybe that was very much his choice.
Sure.
There are plenty of working actors who just work soaps, who just work as, recurring characters on different shows without being the lead. So maybe that was his path.
Yeah.
Or he also did Broadway. I mean,
Yeah.
he was busy. And I think this also says he was a comic. So I guess a comedian?
Oh, okay.
Oh, he was also in Tammy and the T-Rex. I've never seen that. I don't know anything about this movie. It's a funny title.
One of the really terrible rom-coms I just watched has Denise Richards in it.
Oh.
And Dean Cain.
Oh, Dean Cain. Don't get me started.
And I respect both of them as actors, but that film was so bad.
I used to kind of like him too because he was in that, the Superman TV show, and I thought it was a pretty decent show. I mean, it was kind of extra campy for my taste, but
Sure,
I love Superman media.
That was the one with Terry
Hatcher,
right? Yeah,
she's so good.
I like her.
But yeah, I saw some sus stuff he posted online, which I mean, I don't know. I think online brings out the worst in some people.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
But also, it is also a place where people feel comfortable being the shittiest version of themselves.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of times what you're getting is
someone's worst side.
actual essence.
Yeah.
Like,
and
like,
it's just
this
laid
is,
out.
This is what's in your heart. Is like you're like enjoying being an asshole.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Or God forbid you make a mistake and you said something out of anger or you said something whatever, and now
Sure.
100 million people just screenshotted that and saved it forever. So even if you
Yeah.
delete it, it still exists and they're gonna drag you for it. So
Yeah.
I can see it both ways.
And I can't pretend like I know what it's like to be a famous actor. I have no idea what that life is like. I'm sure it's very frustrating at times to have everything you say be taken out of context and twisted around.
Sure, I think that would be exhausting personally.
It's real easy on the internet to just put out whatever your first thought is, and oftentimes our first thoughts are not the most reasonable ones.
Yeah, you have to catch yourself sometimes. You have to make sure you don't say something that can be misconstrued.
Yeah. I mean, I am not a celebrity, but I do try to be careful about how I post on the internet and what I comment, what I choose to comment on, and how I choose to comment.
It's very much our image. Part of our image is online. So does Weekend at Bernie's 2 deserve to exist?
Oh, great question. I'm going to say yes, but with a little asterisk. And I'm going to say that the asterisk is they needed a bigger budget. I think if they'd had more money to do it right, I think it could have been more successful.
What would you have liked overall them to do differently? Would it be abandoning the voodoo subplot? Would it be another reason why Bernie is dancing? Could he have faked his death in the first movie?
After the water skiing, I'm not sure.
Oh, yeah, he does go water skiing.
That's a great question. I feel like I don't know all of the things that I would do differently with more money. The voodoo was kind of confusing. I was like, I'm not really sure why this is a part of it, but at the same time, if you don't have the voodoo, then you don't have the dancing corpse.
Yeah.
It's a bigger part of the entertainment in this film.
I'll tell you what I thought.
And it gets them into more trouble.
It does. I'll tell you what I thought about the whole beginning of the movie. I feel like our main characters don't have any agency. Mm-hmm. I feel like they're not really making the decisions that move the plot forward. It's actually these other guys that put this spell on the corpse that actually pushes things forward. Mm-hmm. It feels like this was originally a story about them putting a voodoo curse or spell or whatever on this body in order to get the treasure. But then somebody was like, no, why would these insurance guys know anything about voodoo? We need these two other guys who suspiciously seem just like them, also seem like New Yorkers, also seem like two hapless idiots who just are doing something for greed.
Like, they were definitely not born and raised on St. Thomas.
They felt like analogs of Larry and Richard. And that got me thinking, like, what was the original version of the script? Larry and Richard go to put a spell on them, and some executive was like, no, that's too far-fetched. Have these two randos over here do it instead. I don't know if that's better. I don't know if it's better at all. I mean, they do make the decision to go to the Virgin Islands themselves, but they're independent of the fact that the body had to get there anyway, which it's a lot of hoops to leap through to get to that point in plot-wise.
You know, when we first see them, when they're starting out in this beginning of the story, they need something, right?
Yeah.
So that's the impetus for them to go on their journey of the film. Mm-hmm. And then at some point the stakes have to go up. So, like, does that always happen by their own hand?
No, not necessarily. There can be other extenuating circumstances. It's not always going to be your main character that does everything. I mean, you might have your James Bond type who's reacting to a supervillain type, and that's the whole story. It's not like James Bond is the one who set off the bomb with a timer about to explode.
Right.
He's there responding to and doing his job of stopping nameless bad guy number 3. I think this movie, I don't know if I'm going to talk, I might actually go back on what I said. It still can exist. It's still a change up on the first movie. It's not exactly the same. The hijinks are very reminiscent, right? Mm-hmm. It's very similar. They're propping up the body. They're finding a way to trick the bank teller and stuff. Yeah. But you add the dancing corpse, and it does actually add another element. So, yeah, the movie is not great, but I still enjoyed it, so maybe it deserves to have existed. Now, Weekend at Bernie's 3, I'm going to read the script before I decide on that one. Yeah, I think this is definitely a case of a movie where I expected to just say, no, it didn't need to exist, but there's enough of those fun moments where I'm like, okay, this is still a fun popcorn flick that you can put on and just go about your day and enjoy it. So silly. But you know what? I needed some whimsy in my life.
You know what? And if that's being provided to you by a film, then that's fully valid. I like it.
Thank you for validating me. I needed that. I'm sure at one point we are going to come up with a movie where we absolutely hate the sequel or the adaptation or the remake. Ironically, I think we've done pretty solid on our first 3 films. Mm-hmm. I think Solaris is probably the only one where we were like, the second one really didn't need to exist. It's not a terrible movie. It just wasn't very commercially viable, I don't think.
Yeah.
But, I mean,
we
so
talked
far...
about that in the episode, so if you want to hear about it...
Our first
check
episode.
Go check out our Solaris episode.
But yeah, I'm sure we'll find one we hate eventually, and we will, hate watch something for you and dig into why we don't like it, and talk about how Hollywood doesn't have any new ideas.
Welcome to Lights, Camera, Remake.
Sorry, hold on.
Okay.
My dog is just going to town on her leg over there. Can you not?
Oh, honey.
Just relax. It's okay. So sorry. Try that again. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I've only done this about 7 times.
Take that.
What's one more?
We don't have to introduce ourselves again.
Yeah.
It's episode 3. Hopefully they've heard at least one of the other ones.
And if they're curious, they can go back and listen to.
And in fact, I encourage it.
I insist.
No, do it.